Hey everybody, what's good? It's Wes. Hope you're doing well. So this session is actually going to be a session that was planned for a live stream. We go live every Saturday on Twitch and on YouTube, and things were. I was going to say things were going well, but it never really got off the ground. Uh, so this past week, tried to stream whatever happened, either my internet service provider or Twitch or YouTube or Restream or somewhere something was going on. I don't think it was my connection. I tested all my stuff, but the art god said that was not the night to do it. But yes, never let a good crisis go to waste, as Winston Churchill would say. So what we're going to do is we're going to reformat what I had planned for the stream and turn it into a standard weekly, this week's YouTube video. So I wanted to do a sketch session in Clip Studio Paint. I'm loving it more and more. I have some favorite brushes that I've talked about in other videos and things like that, but I want to spend more time in there. I want to get a very specific method down of sketching and maybe adding some grayscale, some decent quick brushwork to have the turnaround time be fast, because I'm planning on doing maybe some graphic novel-esque stuff. So what we're going to do the little intro thingy. Then we're going to, thingy is a technical term, by the way. Then we're going to hop over to the inspiration side of it. I have a whole reference sheet that you're going to see that I'm going to talk a little bit about why I chose these specific artists to kind of look at and see what I could kind of soak in the knowledge from. And then we're just going to do the standard time lapse that you're probably used to for the channel with narration, talking about Clip Studio, some of my favorite brushes for this method, but what was going on in my head whenever I was making this, and also just general tips and tricks that I have for having a very fast workflow. So let's get down to it. Let's get into the nitty gritty, into the weeds as it were, and let's do some sketching in Clip Studio Paint. All right, so here we are. I'm in Clip Studio Paint right here, but I also have PureRef open. So I have a link to PureRef in the description below. I love PureRef. You can bring all of your reference images that you want and have it kind of stay on top of specific pieces of software. So that way, as you work, so if I go to always on top, you can actually draw and sketch and stuff while having some references up. I'm not going to utilize that as much because I'm not going to do a master study of anything, but these are three artists who I'm a big fan of, and I have their work up because they actually do some things that I want to try to introduce in my workflow. And let's just take a look at Yukihiro Kajimoto, Akihito Yoshida, and Tsubasa Masao. And, apologize for my Midwest gumpy white accent on those names, but I love these artists. So Yukihiro is somebody who's made their own kind of manga and worked with companies like Square Enix a lot, especially on this the Star Ocean Second Story revamp, kind of the reboot that they put out, I think, earlier this year or maybe late last year. Very, very good. One of my favorite games of all time. But I love this style, not necessarily just anime or manga style faces, but really some of these nice kind of watercolor-esque color blends that we see right here. Beautiful, beautiful work. Even on his personal stuff, you can kind of see the same style there, especially if we look at right here, these slight temperature shifts and things like that, slight kind of melty colors almost. And, with PureRef, if I go here and I go to canvas and grayscale, it still plays really well in value as well. I love this kind of lighting, this sort of rendering. I really, really like it. And kind of taking it old school, if we talk about Akihiko Yoshida, let me bring it back into color real quick. Same thing. I'm a big fan of the Ivalice Alliance. So Ivalice is kind of a fictional Final Fantasy realm, which existed in Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy 12. Vagrant Story is also part of it. Just gorgeous art, just stunning. Look at this, a Tactics Ogre is another one. Love these games. I adore, maybe pound for pound, my favorite kind of franchise games are games that take place in this setting, have this style. I love it. There's some Ashley Riot for you old school Vagrant Story nerds like me. But yeah, Final Fantasy 12, you can see the beautiful, once again, kind of the watercolor stuff. There's some texture brushstrokes kind of overlaid on top of this, which that's really easy to do that in a few seconds. But really just the rendering style, you can see like right here, kind of messy, but still tells what it needs to. It can sketch pretty quickly. You see what I mean? It's not necessarily highly rendered, but it still looks good. And I think if we're going to be going for a graphic novel style, I think that might be a great way to go. You can even see some canvas texture here. So we're going to be playing with a lot of that as well. Of course, it's me, so you know there's going to be impasto brushes and all that good stuff. But the very quick at a glance, softer watercolor, sort of grayscale render type stuff that we see here, maybe some sketch lines here and there. That's really what I want to take more so than the specific style. And then Tsubasa Maso is also here, and he's done, this is from Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, which also had kind of a reboot. I think it was called Tactics Ogre Reborn, came out last year. Love the games, just incredible stuff. But I love, yeah, kind of the sketchier line style. This was really cool. So this was from Tactics Ogre 1995, and this was the initial artwork for it. Let me go back to color so you guys can see how they kind of leveled up. This was actually made, this image right here, was by Akihiko Yoshida, right? And then, as the Redux has come out, Tsubasa Maso did a kind of a revamped version of it. And look at that, man. That is ridiculous. Both of those are super good. I love the composition on both. But like, isn't that crazy how, 20 years, oh, damn, 30 years, right? God, 30 years. I'm so old. 30 years difference. This is how these artists can level up in that amount of time. They work on the same team. Yoshida and Maso work on the same team a lot. So it's funny that they kind of learn from each other and level up and stuff. But yeah, just ridiculous. But I love the loose brushwork. I love the fact that it's not super highly rendered, and it can be done fast. So these are the things I'm going to have on the other monitor, just as kind of an inspiration. I'm thinking I'm going to do more of a, maybe something like this. It's going to be a female knight or a female like scout with the cape, with the cowl. She's like setting, I'm thinking it's going to be more of a top-down view, almost like an isometric view. I need to practice that. So not a lot of front face stuff on this one, even though all these references are pretty much directly facing forward. I do want, well, this one's not, but it's going to be more like this angle or this angle, because I need to try more dynamic angles as well. But I just want to give you guys a shout on what I'm looking at on my other monitor. And yeah, let's get over to the time lapse. I'm going to use some scratchy brushes, some kind of charcoaly brushes at first, or like very, textured, gritty, dry brushes to kind of get the basic shapes. Then we might refine it a little bit with more specific mechanical brushes, like mechanical pencil, or maybe an art pen. I don't know. I haven't even made the picture yet, so you're going to see me make it in real time. So yeah, let's hop on over to the time lapse, and we'll start the narration and all that good stuff too on what I was thinking while I was making it. Now we're in the time lapse. So yes, I'm excited about this whole kind of prospect of using Clip Studio Paint to make some small graphic novella, manga, whatever you want to call it. Just sequential narrative art. It's going to be something that primarily I'm going to use as a level up for my illustration stuff. Because in order to make anything narrative like this, you have to simplify your process. You know what I mean? You have to get it down to such a quick, I hate to say assembly line because that makes it sound completely mechanical, but I think the process side of it does kind of have to be that. I haven't really dug too deep into it yet, but I see it being a thing of, if you can find a way to save time and still get maximum impact on your visual storytelling, do that. Because you can't spend, 10 hours per panel trying to get perfect brush stroke. Like, you could, but literally you will make one thing your entire life. You know what I mean? And that's it. But if you want to get better at it, just like anything, you have to repeat it over and over and over. So that's what we're doing here, is we're just exploring some of the graphite brushes and some of the, charcoal and maybe some watercolory stuff. We're definitely going to be using the Photoshop brushes that come from the Ray Frendon brush pack. And, I've talked about some of these brush packs on my previous video about my favorite Clip Studio paint brushes. And it's really nice to have some fallback, like comfort food brushes that I know are going to work. So Photoshop Standard and Photoshop Wet are going to be my main drivers, I think, because that Photoshop Wet brush is perfect. It is, like I've said in that previous Clip Studio video, that might be my favorite digital brush ever because it can do anything. It doesn't have, a ton of like texture or like, dual layer, fancy tricks and all this stuff. But what it does do is, the harder you press, the more opaque and more solid the brush feels. However, if you do a gentle touch, it's more kind of a wet blender brush, and it has maximum control, and it's incredible. Like, I've never seen a brush like it. So I know I always sell this brush real big, but I'm telling you, I wish this brush was in every digital painting program. I've been trying to find a way to mimic it in a variety of things that I use, but Clip Studio is the one, man. It's just, the brush engine works so well that I just love using it. But yeah, I wanted to kind of go the route of using those brushes, the Photoshop brushes, as my main way to block in value, but the value would be slightly messy. Like, it would make sense, and, everything would have its local value, meaning, local color. So the armor, or the cowl, cape, or the hair, or these are all going to be separate values, or differentiating values. That way you can make more sense of what you're looking at. It's a good separator, is basically how I think of it. I learned this kind of technique from Ahmed Aldori, who's, worked for Guild Wars, and he's done, Magic the Gathering art and all this other stuff. But a lot of his teaching relies on something called the checkerboard method, which is where you put lights next to darks, next to lights, next to darks, and you do that ad nauseum. And it's a great way to give your piece some really solid readability. And just mentally, I'm thinking readability is going to be paramount in making a graphic novel, or making, a 4-page one-shot, or whatever, whatever kind of storytelling thing that we're going to be working on. And it's funny, I have a good friend, Rick, who, shout out to Rick, he's probably watching right now, but he gave me a little assignment and gave me a 4-page narrative to kind of practice with. So he gave me the script. It says how many panels are per page. It says who the characters are, kind of what they look like, on the page, but not visually what they look like. So it's up to me to design them and stuff like that. But basically, it's a 4-page one-shot. And, after it's done, I will be making a video about it and kind of what I learned and things like that. But this seems to be kind of the best way to get started, is to start on a super small, condensed, relatively easy, as far as it's not a big grand concept. You don't have to invent a lot of things. It's kind of by the numbers, but not in the bad way. It gives you some flexibility. It gives you some room to wiggle and kind of have fun. So it's a good learning experience. And whenever that's done, yeah, I'll post it up, and it probably be free on my website or something like that. But also, it'll have the video attached to be like, okay, here's kind of what the experience was. But utilizing Clip, it has some amazing comic, like creating comic features. So you can do your text bubbles, you can do all this, but you can also do your actual paneling, and it automatically makes your folder structure. So basically it gives you a place where, hey, draw on this layer and it will be contained in this box. You can do that in really every type of painting software, but Clip is the only one I've ever seen where it's built in and it does it automatically, and it's super cool. I'm excited to show that off. But even before we get out of that, so you can tell I'm excited about it, but you really got to nail down, how am I going to make every panel? And that's what this exercise is. So yeah, it's the character. She has kind of long flowing hair. She has, some sort of arm garb thing like wrapped around, like, I don't even know. That's going to be the one thing that's going to be a challenge, is I'll have to really design out my stuff a lot better, instead of just kind of going with the flow. But it's all a learning experience. And I think, coming at it from a painter point of view is going to be a blessing and a curse, because my strong suit, I'll put it this way, my strong suit is not design. I can design the image as far as like, the composition and where your angles and like that type of thing. But actually designing characters, I'm not great at it, because I have my visual library is okay, but it's very much made up of other art or other, books or whatever, which is like, my wizard is probably going to look a lot like Gandalf. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be the pointy hat. It's going to be I could change it up and I could do that, but I'd have to really kind of buckle down and make a concerted effort to be like, okay, no pointed hats, no big beard, no, I'd have to give myself rules, but left up to my own devices, I'm going to make you kind of a generic thing at first, and then we can kind of move on from there. So that's one of my worries kind of going into the project is, is my stuff going to be interesting enough based on the design of the character? But maybe my strong suit, and I should fully embrace it, is more of the kind of cinematic, went to film school and studied all the cinematography stuff and did all that. Maybe if I embrace that a little more, that will be the calling card. That will be the thing that will level up the artwork, is because, yeah, you can get pretty far and you can actually become a professional in the industry by just rendering well. If you can paint well, if you can make skin look like skin, and you can do lighting, okay, and stuff like that, you'll be fine. But I'm figuring out, I'm 5 years in the business, and I'm figuring out you need something else. And depending on the person, that something else could be anything. It could be more texture, or like photo bashing better, or, they do portraits a very distinct way. My good friend George Ireland, he's a genius with portraits. Like, he's featured in museums and all this other, the dude's a rock star, right? So you figure out kind of what your niche is. And I'm thinking my niche, as far as interest level, like what am I interested in making, is going to start going more towards storytelling. And that doesn't mean that everything's going to be a comic book or everything's going to be that. I mean storytelling in the fact of, how can I make this one single image either tell an impactful story or make you interested on what's happening kind of outside of the wheelhouse. And, in film school, we had this term that we would use, and it's called what's outside the window. So a lot of times we would see that actors got so caught up in the inner monologue minutia of a character that they would forget that they're supposed to exist within a world, right? Like there's a context to everything. So, as our directors and cinematographers and all that type of stuff, we would have to kind of prompt actors to kind of eat up more of the scenery, like actually exist within the place instead of sitting there and being all up in their head. Be like, okay, what's outside the window? What's happening? Is it a busy street out there? Is it a snowstorm? Like, what's happening? And bring that into whatever your performance is. And I think the same thing is true for art. I mean, for like illustration and painting, is you have to think of the whole thing. And it might seem kind of overkill to focus so much on, oh, I need to find the exact right brushes, I need to find this, but before I even get started on the 4-page exercise, which is meant to be the primer. Like that's meant to be the thing that you experiment with and then do from the get-go, and then do your real thing, quote unquote. But like now I'm doing a pre-thing before the so it's probably I am probably up in my head too much, But I think if I have a solid grasp of, okay, these are the type of brushes and this is the type of look that I want, it's one less thing I have to worry about while I'm doing it. Does that make sense? Like, I can really hone in and focus on the storytelling, on the narrative, on the camera angles, on the, let's say I do want to give one of the characters a cooler design or whatever. Like, that would be the focus there. So I think there is a method to this madness. I wanted to do some good sketching in Clip. I'm liking Clip more and more. The brush engine just works great. And I can definitely see a process happening here. And that's exciting, because instead of worrying about what references I have or what do I have access to that I can like look from and work from, it's more like, okay, let me just come in here and play for a little bit, see what comes out of it, and then push that to final. And that seems to be the phase I'm in right now. And Clip is great for doing that. You have the 3D models, the kind of, I was going to say marionettes. Is that the right term? Maybe the 3D little characters that you can put and, pose them around and kind of trace over them and all that stuff. Those are really cool. And those are going to come in very handy. I have a feeling, especially if I need to get a very specific perspective, like an overhead shot or maybe a worm's eye view, looking up in like 3 and 4 point perspective or something like that's going to be super valuable just to be able to block in something. But even that has its own things you have to learn, like comfortable posing of a 3D model is a whole skill set. Like all my 3D models look like, they got a stick up their butt because they just stand there straight and they barely move their spine and like all this other stuff. So learning that side of it is going to be different too. So there's a lot to learn since so much is going on in the making of stuff like that. That's why I do feel like breaking things up into, okay, at least I know what brushes I'm going to use. At least I know what I want my sketch to look like visually. As far as like brush strokes and how rough do I want the graphite? Do I want it to be really sketchy or just a little sketchy and then refine it? Or do I want to keep those sketch lines in there to give it a little bit more energy and personality? Those are cool decisions to make. And Clip makes it easy. It really does. So yeah, just a little kind of behind the scenes on this type of thing. It's a completely different workflow. It's funny because I feel like I'm starting with more solid, opaque, round, and square and brushes like that, and then adding the painterly brushes later, which is completely opposite of how I would work either traditionally or in something like Rebel or Art Rage or, Paint Storm Studio, something that's more like mimicking the traditional painting experience. I work very loose and very fast, very kind of a la prima, all on one layer, mix everything together, start pushing paint around and see what happens, and then go in and refine it later. I think with this, it has to kind of be the opposite. I have to sketch it. I have to get my block in, my foundational stuff in first. Then I can go in, maybe do some flats, maybe just get a fill bucket, fill this in with one set of gray. That way all of my values work together. Maybe the foreground is a little darker. Maybe that background's a little lighter, but it's all one thing. And then you kind of come in with, a Photoshop wet brush or whatever, start rendering out some of that lighting, Then after that, get your painterly brushes, your plastic wrap, your kind of impasto sort of cool canvas texture stuff, and then come over top, and then see what that's about. And I think I'm going to stay in black and white. I think that's going to be a valuable thing to do, because that way I can just focus. I can focus on the readability and the clarity, instead of like, well, do these colors set this mood and all that? That's a whole different problem solving thing. I might do 1 or 2 panels in color to really give them some emotion and emphasis, but the rest of it, I think it's going to be in grayscale. I mean, to me, it just makes sense, especially to work quickly. But yeah, that's it. That's all I can really think of. So I will say we're on Thanksgiving week, and hope you're having a safe, lovely holiday. But if you head over to my website, www.wesgardner.art, on the shop until December 1st, you can save 30% off everything with the coupon code THANKYOU. So this is going to be for brushes, for assets, tutorials, all the online courses I have, everything up there. It's going to be good until December 1st. I know this video may come out like middle of the week, maybe around Thanksgiving. So I do apologize for that. Not a lot of time, but know that I do probably have something planned for around New Year's as well. I don't know if it'll be 30%, but if you miss this sale, there will be another one coming up in the next month or two. So yeah, we'll take a look and kind of see what we got there. But yeah, just a big shout out to you guys. Thank you for all of your support during this fine holiday season. And yeah, go check out the website. It has my portfolio, it has all my courses, all that stuff. And yeah, until we meet again, you know the drill. Go make cool art. We'll see you soon. Oh, and by the way, if you need a copy of Clip Studio, there's a link in the description, and it supports the channel as well. But anyways, you know it. You love it. All right, go have fun. Go make cool art. We'll see you soon. Bye.